Now we're heading south to find out about a designer clothing label that's based on a hill country farm in Otago. To find out more, Cosmo Kentish Barnes is with Willie Lawson on his farm at Merton, just north of Dunedin.
Now Willie, where are we heading to?
We're heading northwest into a block that we call the River Paddock 2. It's a pretty high block of ours. It's covered with a lot of tussock, which is predominantly like all our blocks out here. And yeah, it's got most of our main flock of mixed age ewes in it.
Beautiful views from up here.
Yeah, it's nice on a good day. As you can imagine, with being close to the sea, yeah, we can get a fair bit of that easterly sort of claggy wet weather, but also, as you can see, we probably haven't had it for a long time just because we're very dry and we've missed out on a lot of that easterly flow due to the El Nino pattern over the last sort of 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, has that made sheep and beef farming quite challenging?
Definitely, yep. I mean, historically that's our main challenge really, but this year, which has been pretty well documented, we're facing lots of challenges really, with obviously lower red meat prices, higher interest rates and higher costs. So
low wool prices?
Low wool, yeah. Unfortunately we've become used to that, but there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel for that. But yeah, it's just going to be a bit of a slow shift, I think, to try and get back to wool being somewhere where it was or close to a few years ago.
Willie, we are on top of a hill at one of the highest points on your farm, and we're looking at some amazing scenery. How would you describe it?
It's high, hard hill country, I suppose I'd call it. But yet with being so close to the coast, a lot of people probably don't quite know what's in behind the hills here until they get out here. So out to our sort of southwest is a big property called Lamb Hill, right on the horizon, and that's back towards Middlemarch. We sort of go across the river there, which is the south branch of the Waikawaiti River, and we sort of go back another hill range there before we go into our neighbouring property, Four Rivers.
And so how much land have you got in total here?
There's about 1,350 hectares, probably about 1,150 of that is effective. You can see some bushy blocks out there. 3 of those are in Kiwi 2 covenants, but more's in the pipeline to do as well.
And we can see the river way down there in the gully.
Yep, and its flow at the moment is probably a little bit lower than it usually is, just due to the lack of rain within the area.
Yes, there's a mob of ewes on the top here, and we can see more sheep scattered down the hills towards the river.
Yep, and this block, they're all in this block, well, most of them hopefully. There's the odd one that pokes out, but this block's about 100 hectares in size, so it's a reasonably big block and lots of different places for the sheep to be grazing and shelter and in the sunshine.
Tell me about the sheep. What breeds do well on this land?
Yeah, so these are Romdales. These are as in Romney-Perrindale crosses. They're just a good, hardy, resilient sheep. Great survivability. They move well, and yeah, they're just good, hard sheep, which really need in this sort of country.
Because of the low wool prices, do you focus mainly on meat?
We do. But I mean, we haven't changed our system because of that over the years. We're still basically using the same practices and farming the same way, but just because of that shift to meat, in terms of profitability, that is our main source of income now, and wool is really just a hope to cover your costs in terms of shearing. But I mean, you're shearing every year anyway, so that wool's going to be there, and we do it from an animal health point of view as well. So yeah, we've sort of recently changed back. We used to shear the ewes twice a year, but due to the costs of shearing, that's gone up extensively in recent years, and the low return on wool, we've just gone back to once a year shearing, which hasn't been the end of the world either, because the wool is longer when it goes to sell, so that there is potentially more demand out there, as long as you can sort of try and maintain the quality of it.
And your wife, Georgina, has started a fashion brand that is adding value to this wool.
Yeah, 100%. Yep, no, it is. It's not the ewe wool that we use for her fashion brand. She uses our Hogget wool, but the hope is that by using that Hogget wool, it'll just continue to sort of hopefully snowball in terms of the uses for wool that we and other people out there can try to find to use, and just get it going back in the right way it needs to be going. I mean, it's such a great product, and it's a byproduct of our farming system, which is just completely underutilised. And, you know, my dad, he put a lot of work into genetics and whatnot to try and create really good wool off here. So, you know, to keep that going in some form is really cool.
And Willie, what's the annual wool clip that you get from the farm?
Yeah, it's around sort of 12,000 kilos, probably all classes of stock included. It's probably more like 9,000 from the ewes, and then the Hoggets and the ewe lambs sort of make up the rest of it.
And how much is put aside for Georgina's clothing?
At the moment, it's just about, it's probably about 70% of the Hogget wool, but the aim will be that it'll be all of that Hogget wool, so that'll be around 1,500 to 2,000 kilos. It's a small percentage at the moment, but with the demand of wool globally at the moment not being as high and the prices not being that high, it's a far better way to try and utilise it, really. And it obviously fits with what George is doing, her ethos and whatnot, in the production of her coats. You know, like just the whole slow fashion sort of movement, I think is a great thing. We could all do with buying less of the things which are cheaper and made offshore and less sustainable materials.
I will be catching up with Georgina soon to find out more about the woolen clothing she's making. But Willie, tell me about the history of this land. When did your family first start farming here?
My grandfather bought the place in 1950. They moved from up in the Matakanui Valley, and my father took over when my grandfather passed away. Dad would have been reasonably young, so he took it over when he was about 24, and then we farmed it as one, as our family with my older brother and my dad. And about 7 years ago we split it up between my brother and I, and just good, progressive and unselfish family members really to be able to make it happen. So we're very lucky.
Quite nice to have your brother as a neighbour.
No, very, very, very good. Yep, we still help each other out with certain aspects of farming, some big jobs, whether it's big days in the yards or whatnot. And we're still able to have a few beers and a barbecue at the end of the day. So that's the main thing.
Now, where are your cattle?
They're all out in the back country at the moment. As we look sort of southwest to those high bushy blocks, they sort of go and winter out there, and they're a pretty key component for our farming system just in terms of managing pasture quality. I mean, as you can see out here, when it does grow, it can grow pretty quickly, so you end up with a lot of brown top and tag. So the cows are great for getting that down so that it's really good for the sheep to come in behind them. So they're doing the hard work out on the back hills at the moment for the winter, and then come springtime we'll spread them out amongst all the blocks to calve in.
Looking back towards the ocean, what is the bay that we can see?
So that's the Waikouaiti beach there, which goes to Matanika, which is the peninsula coming out there. So it's Waikouaiti, and that bay joins up to another beach town called Karatane. And as you can see, sort of in the foreground before those towns is really good productive farmland between us and there. So good variety of landscape and farming.
We can see the ocean spray lifting off the sea.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, there was a wee bit of talk that we might have been getting a bit of fog or drizzle overnight, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And often that fog and drizzle can get a wee bit depressing up in here, but at the moment we'd fully take it just anyway to get a bit of moisture into the ground, even though it is winter and we're not going to get a whole lot of growth out of it. But at the same time, it's a pretty magical view on a day like today.
We have come back down to the farmyard and am with Georgina outside the shearing shed. Georgina, tell me about your background.
I grew up rurally, but not off a farm, up in Wanaka, and I trained as a radiographer first, so I worked overseas as a radiographer, and then when I came back from London, I did some postgrad study and became a sonographer.
Are you still doing that?
I am, yes.
Do you love the farming way of life?
Yeah, it's great. Well, we have 3 boys, so there's plenty for them to keep occupied doing, so it's perfect, really.
How old are your boys?
7, 5 and 10 months.
And on top of farming and family and doing that clinical work, you are also a fashion designer. Tell me about that.
I still can't believe that when people say it, that I'm a fashion designer. It was sort of a childhood dream that I never thought would actually come true. So I really enjoy that part of it. It's kind of, I say it's a hobby, really, but I love it.
But you have your own brand, and all the clothing that you make comes from your sheep on this farm.
Yes, it does. Yep, it's great.
What is your brand called?
Atia. So that's my grandmother's name backwards. Her name was Rita, and she was a dressmaker. So she made wedding dresses mainly. That was her job, and she was pretty clever, very clever actually. And I spent lots of time in her sewing room as a child, fiddling around with her, and she tried to teach me a thing or two. And
So that's where your inspiration comes from?
Part of it, yeah, definitely. But with the declining wool prices, and I was grumbling and groaning at my husband about it, and he said, well, why don't you try and do something with it? And I thought, okay, challenge accepted. And that's how I started investigating and researching and finding out what I could actually do with this great fibre that we grow right here on the farm.
And you started thinking about coats.
Coats, yes.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, strong wool's been used in carpet forever, and I thought, well, why can't we use that in the fashion industry and make a great piece that is going to last forever, because it's such a durable product and there's so many benefits to wool. So I looked into options of things that we could do, and I love coats, and in London when we were living there I sort of got a bit of an obsession with coats, so I thought I'm going to start making my own.
What was the first step you took?
I had to start looking into if it was possible to use our wool here in New Zealand and where I could actually get it processed and how to process it, because not being from a farming background, I sort of didn't know that much about wool, and I didn't know what scouring was and the processes it needed to go through to become fabric. So yeah, once I'd done all the research, I thought, well, I really have to do something with this now, and here we are.
Now, I've just taken a picture of Georgina wearing one of her coats, and I'll put that onto the Country Life webpage in case people want to see it. Now, tell me about the quality of the wool. Do you hand select it?
So our wool that we use for these coats comes off our Hogget sheep. So Hoggets are older than lamb, but haven't had a lamb yet, so they're not quite ewes. And they produce a longer length wool. It's slightly finer than ewe wool, so it gives a softer feel. We don't hand select the fleeces yet, but we might this year. But we've done lots of testing on the Hogget clip and made sure it's all up to scratch for using for our product, and it's come out really well actually. It's perfect.
Yes. What sort of micron is that wool?
So it's 31. So it's not as fine as a lamb's wool, but it needs to be a bit higher microns for the strength, for the weaving of the fabric.
And what have been some of the biggest obstacles you've faced along this journey?
The biggest obstacle was finding each factory or place that would be able to process the wool here within New Zealand. When I started researching, it wasn't widely advertised. These mills and scours. And I remember in Dunedin here there was wool mills up in Roslyn and in Mosgiel, and I couldn't believe that there's just nothing left of them, and I was trying to find where these places were, and they just don't exist anymore.
Is that because most of our wool goes to China now?
Yes, it all gets exported. I mean, we're a country full of sheep, so why do we not process wool here? It blows my mind.
Well, shall we head up to your studio and have a look at some of your coats and blazers?
Sure.
We have come into your studio, Georgina, and this is where all the magic happens.
Sure is, yeah.
There's a row of beautiful looking woolen coats along the wall here. Can you describe what they're like for our listeners, please?
Wow, they are soft and cosy and warm and inviting, really.
What's your designer style? What inspires you?
I like classic designs that are going to last a lifetime, really. You don't want them to go out of fashion or out of style. You want to be able to wear them with anything, and this is the original.
Do you want to pull that off so we can have a look? Now, what colour is this?
This is wheat, quite a natural colour. So it's a double-breasted coat with a lapel collar. We sort of go for a slightly oversized look, so it's a relaxed fit. We've got patch pockets, and so nice and handy for phones and keys, and it's a good length too. It covers us down to about mid-calf.
Yes. Quite a simple design.
Very simple and classic, really.
And there's a seam down the middle of the back.
So that is a double flat valved seam, and I wanted my coats to be unlined so that you could really get the benefits of the wool without a lining in there. And so we really did work hard to get these nice clean finishes and the seams as a feature.
And it's amazing that all these coats are made from the wool that comes from this farm.
I know. That was one of the most exciting moments, was seeing the first coat come out of the package, and we saw that wool go from a sheep to a fashion item, which was quite incredible, really.
Now, you've got some of your scoured wool here.
Well, this is our Hogget clip, and we love that we can get everything done here in New Zealand, but it just feels soft and it smells delicious too.
It does, doesn't it? So what happens to this scoured wool? What are the steps that you need to take to be able to make these woolen coats?
So we take our bales fresh from the sheep up to Timaru, and they get scoured, which is cleaned essentially. It takes all the grease out of the wool, and then this wool gets sent directly up to Wellington, which they then card and spin it into the yarn, and the yarn will then get sent directly from Wellington to Auckland, and we get it woven into fabric at the mill in Auckland, and then from Auckland they send it to our cutters, and the cutters cut the pattern, and then to our manufacturers in Auckland also, who sew it into the end garment. And I didn't want to do it if I couldn't keep it all done within New Zealand. It didn't make sense to have this great product here in New Zealand and then send it overseas and then bring it back and sell it as New Zealand wool. It had to be all made here within the country.
I guess there's lots of costs involved in this process.
Just with each step of the way, the costs can get quite high. I mean, processing the wool into the fabric is the biggest cost of making these coats here in New Zealand, but
especially for small runs.
Well, no, the small runs works well because we can sort of do as many as we want when we want, and our manufacturers are really good. We just have a good relationship with them.
You can get them to make your coats on demand.
Yes, when we need them,
Yeah, what a great situation to be in.
Yeah, it's great. And we are going to do more designs and patterns, so we'll release a new style next year, which I've just started working on.
What's that going to be like?
I think we'll go back to a length coat.
Because you've got some shorter ones here too, haven't you?
Yeah, these are the blazers, which have been really popular for spring and sort of autumn in between season styles. It's sort of a dress jacket that you can wear out for dinner or just over jeans or whatever.
Very stylish.
That's about all I've got left there too. They've been selling really well.
Where can people buy your coats?
So we're online, and we have some in Hype, in store in Dunedin, and Gifted in Wanaka.
So people can contact you to find out more.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an increasing amount of interest in clothing that has a sustainable story like your coats and blazers?
I definitely do think there has been a change, or there is a change happening. Even from when I started, people didn't really understand slow fashion or sustainability, but there's a lot more out there now and people are talking about it, and hopefully we start to see a bit more of a change.
Georgina Lawson there in her design studio. Cosmo was also chatting to her hubby Willie on their hill country farm in Otago. For a link to Georgina's Atea woolen coats website and to see photos Cosmo took on the day, go to the Country Life webpage.